Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Knowledge in Action. Today we have our special guest, Brother Adam Smidi. Brother Adam Smidi has plenty of experience in the community, and he's been responsible for organizing Eid's celebrations for many years now. Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing, Brother Adam?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Ismail, and thank you everyone else for attending today. I appreciate it. It's nice to be here with you guys.
Pleasure to have you. As always, guys, let's get straight to the subject. Brother Adam, tell us about your experience organizing Eid celebrations every year.
I sure can. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you again for having me. And it's a real pleasure to share, especially this experience that I've had, a wonderful experience that really I've enjoyed and learned a lot from. So I'd like to share some of the challenges and also some of the positive takeaways that we've experienced. And I want to start by first and foremost, saying that this was not an individual effort, that it was a team effort, right? And Ismail was as part of that team as well, as a matter of fact. And there's a lot of hands and people involved in making the unified Eids happen. And so I guess I'll start from the beginning. And this was dating back, I would say, 2014 was our first kind of unified Toledo Eid celebration. The idea came from a group of people, which I was one of, that came together, and we're just simply talking about how can we make our community better. I mean, this is really where we began. We talked about the deep issues and concerns that not only we had, but that were affecting our entire community and even greater society. At the time, and still somewhat today, there was really a hostile climate towards Muslims. Different things were happening, different terrorist attacks and whatnot in some parts of the country and even in our own communities. And we felt like we needed to do something to really speak out and have our voice heard and amplified as much as possible. Parents were discussing about how they felt their kids were, discomforted by everything going on, and that they were disconnected from the mosque, and that the traditional masjid programming wasn't good enough, and all of these things kind of, along with drugs, alcoholism, some of the temptations and desires they have, and even their internal kind of conviction regarding Islam, their faith was starting to become questioned. And we heard this from a lot of parents, a lot of active members in the community. So we thought, how can we use our time, our energy, our donations to best kind of leverage and face these challenges. So this obviously isn't something unique to just the Toledo community. These there are probably, I'm sure, countless individuals that have talked about these same issues. It's challenging being Muslims in America. That's not a secret. For me, myself, I had to oftentimes live kind of between two powerful cultures that shaped my identity growing up. And oftentimes, those two seemed like they were in contradiction to one another. And that's not easy for a young person to kind of juggle and manage. And so this is not, again, unique to our community. We felt like this is something happening all over the place, and it really is. And we at the time surveyed and talked to a lot of people, and we came again to the conclusion that something had to be done. So we realized these challenges are really big. They're massive, right? They're too big for one person, for one group of people, or for just one organization to handle. And of course, every organization in our community, and we have fantastic organizations in our community here in Toledo and across the country, I'm sure, they all give their all in trying to address some of these issues that we've mentioned, and they've been doing, again, a fantastic jobs. But we're facing dire times. We were, and I think we still are, for Muslims in this country. And right now, we need to do more than ever. And I always use the term, we're like here, we're mediocre, right? I consider our community good. It's good, it's average, it gets the job done, it's mediocre. But when do we say mediocrity is not enough, right? When do we reach for greatness? I think it's about time, right? Now that we're entering into a majority second and third generation of Muslims in this country, it's time to kind of break through that glass ceiling, if you will, that's kind of been where we've plateaued, and reach for something and build something greater. That was really our motivation when we came together for the first time. So with that being said, we met up, I believe, at a dinner here at the local Grape Leaf Diner. We'll give them a quick plug. Great food. If you guys are still looking for iftar, they're taking orders as we speak. And we wanted to sit down with the leaders of the organizations, the active members, and talk this out. Our idea was very simple. It's a concept that actually I spent a lot of time. I had the privilege, and I currently do still have the privilege of researching as part of a PhD program at Bowling Green State University. And so the scholarly term is interorganizational collaboration, or IOC. And interorganizational collaboration, we wanted to apply this concept to our Muslim faith-based organizations in Toledo. And let me unpack that a little bit. Interorganizational collaboration involves one, cooperation, coordination, and exchange of resources, right? So resources can be people, funding, information, ideas. These are all resources, right? So the first part of IOC is cooperation, coordination, and the exchanging of these vital resources, which many times are limited. And then the second part of it, which is equally as important, is having mutual respect for the individual goals or joint goals of each institution, right? So we can't just say, your goals aren't important, what you're doing is not important. We need to just focus on what all of us want. No, that's not quite how it works. You can't have one without the other. For it to work, there has to be a what's in it for me for every organization, right? For them to play nice with everyone else and collaborate in a meaningful way, you have to have that mutual respect for each of the individual goals of each organizations, right? So, and for this to work, we have to have members that organize around these big focal problems, these big issues that we've discussed, and work on leveraging resources and accomplishing objectives that could not be realized alone. That's the whole point of this, right? The whole point is that there are some things that one organization cannot tackle, no matter how good you are. And so that's where this IOC concept comes in, is that these problems are too big. We need everybody. We need resources. We need to, maximize to really tackle them head on. And the quality and effectiveness of IOCs depends on the people's willingness to work together, right? You got to be willing to work together voluntarily, without someone telling you that you have to. It has to really come voluntarily, and you have to be willing to share your resources, which are not always easy things to do, right? These things are delicate, they're complicated, organizations can be messy, and IOCs aren't certainly very neat at all times. But they are a significant part of our civil society sector. I mean, this is not a new idea. Many Christian faith-based organizations organize together to focus on the provision of social services, health initiatives, community development, and in an arena where Muslim organizations do our best individually, but we do not seem to get the traction and create the same level of awareness as our Christian and Jewish counterparts have done so far in this country, right? They have these huge interorganizational collaborative efforts you see from our Christian and Jewish counterparts, but we have a few, if you look at the big ones, obviously, Math, ICNA, and ISNA, and these are a few examples of where interorganizational collaboration has worked very well. And so one of the biggest challenges, obviously, of this is just the diversity that we have across our organizations, right? So to try to develop productive relationships towards some kind of cooperation becomes really difficult because of how diverse our community is, and just how diverse Muslims are in general, right? We're the most diverse religion out there. And, these collaborations are filled, like I said, with complications involving the coordination of members, and sometimes they have competing values and interests, and that makes, achieving a collective identity extremely difficult, right? And we need to have collective identity. So I'll read this off of a paper that I wrote last year, and I was doing a lit review on this topic, and the literature suggests that collective identities have the capacity to motivate activity in interorganizational collaborations because they create the legitimacy and social capital needed to enable action and support subsequent IOC efforts. So the literature talks about the importance of forming what they call a collective identity between all of the organizations that are collaborating together. And right, this is like the overarching goal, if you will, objective that keeps people together, keeps them working together, because we're all on the same page and working towards the same goal, essentially. So back to our idea now. So we sat down, we looked, hey, we have multiple faith-based organizations right here in Toledo, and each one has really unique strengths that they can bring to the community. So we thought, what if we could be the volunteers that could help facilitate this interorganizational collaboration? What if we could volunteer our time and be the task force, if you will, that listens to what each organization wants to achieve and helps them achieve those goals? What if we could do all the legwork for them initially in hopes that over time that the collaboration would happen between them voluntarily after realizing all the benefits that come from it? And so, yeah, that's kind of what we wanted to do. We wanted to facilitate that in any way possible, even if that means getting out of the way, right? Because we in no way wanted to be the leaders or spearheading this initially. We just, wanted to kind of bring it up. If they tell us move out of the way, we'd happily do that, because we strongly believe, that research shows that this type of collaboration will not only help address those massive concerns that we brought up, but will also help each organization achieve its own goals individually, as well as assist in increasing the love and compassion between our organizations, and by default between the members of those organizations and community-wide, right? Collaboration always leads to great things when it's done right. So where do we start with this? Such a huge kind of initiative. What do you do? Where do you start? Well, tonight I'll talk about some of the initiatives that we've brought forth and we've gotten some very positive feedback from. First and foremost being the Unified Eid Project. We thought to ourselves, what better way to begin this inter-organizational collaboration than by all of us celebrating Eid together, right? I mean, on the surface, it sounds like a very simple idea, not complicated, seems like it makes sense. And again, this was just the first step of the larger goal. I mean, I think it's important that people know that we didn't go into this just wanting to do a unified Eid. Like the purpose of unifying was to achieve the bigger goal, which is true inter-organizational collaboration. But so we did a presentation where we invited all the leaders of the masajid. We had it at the Sultanic Club, I believe, and we did a presentation. PowerPoint was really nice. We addressed some of the big overarching concerns that our community had. We addressed, Islamophobia, which was really big at that time and still is somewhat. That's a multi-million-dollar industry that, money keeps getting pumped into to just keep spewing out, literature, digital media, anything, politicians, radio shows, whatever they can to just keep Islam kind of as a target and stereotype and these types of things. What was that, Smide?
I was going to say as a stranger.
Correct, right? As the other. That's a great way to put it. How do we keep Islam as a stranger or as an other and not let them be part of the fabric of this country, which rightfully we should be. We were some of the first, people here. And so the first initiative, like I said, was Eid. Eid sounds great. Why don't we work together and do all one big Eid? I mean, people were complaining about that. I know I was. I had to face a question every year, like, which Eid am I going to go to this year? Well, my uncle's going there. My aunt's going there. My cousins are going to go here. I won't get to see all my friends because they go there. We had about 4, 5, 6 Eid celebrations. All great and fine, but what if we had one big Eid when everyone can attend? What if we have amazing food and entertainment? And most importantly, what if we really make it a day that our children will never forget? Like make it like the best Eid ever, just games, bouncy houses, gifts, you name it, we'll get it. Looking back, that was really the thing that I took away that I'm most proud of is the look and the joy on the children's faces and their parents coming up to us after these events and just thanking us for making Eid a meaningful part of their life. That really was something that, alhamdulillah, I'll always be grateful to be a part of that because I know what it was like growing up and Eid didn't really get enough attention, right? It was just another day. We even went to school sometimes on that day and, it was just not a big deal, certainly not even close to the Christmas that my classmates would have, right? And I just thought that was unfair for a really long time.
So Adam, why is it that although there is this experience and this vision that we want our youth to have, why was there a struggle? Why was there an uphill battle? Or maybe even a better place to start, why wasn't it done in the first place?
Yeah, great question, because it did seem really easy. And we were pretty naive, at least myself, going into it, thinking that this is going to be an easy sell, right? I mean, this makes sense. Well, it's not that easy, and I understand why. So you have a long-standing tradition, and some centers, some institutions here in town that have been around, right, for 30 years or so. And sometimes they have a tradition that's really hard to break, right? So some institutions said, well, we've been having Eid, at this time, this way for 30 years. People are used to it. They come from surrounding states. We can't let these people down. So I certainly can kind of sympathize with that. Traditions are hard to break. And once you're used to something, it's hard to do something else, right? Change isn't always that easy. And, why hasn't this been done before? To answer that question, I'm not sure there was ever a drastic or dire need as there is today, rather, because we started as a small community. After all, we started with one masjid, right? We started just with one masjid in our community. Everybody went to that masjid, whether you were Shia, Sunni, whether you prayed with your hands down or up, whether what madhab you are from, it didn't matter. Nationality didn't matter. It was just, this was our masjid. We all went there. And over time, of course, our community grew, and that was certainly part of the expansion and the addition of multiple institutions. But I would be lying to myself if I said that that was the only reason that we began expanding and adding more institutions. And quite frankly, the fact of the matter is that differences were being highlighted. Our differences kind of split us apart, for lack of a better way to put it. And differences come in all shapes and forms. Differences in the way people make decisions, differences in the way they practice the religion, differences in the way that even they talk and look. And you can see that if you look back and see, and trace back every organization and their beginning and how it happened, a lot of it, some of it did have to do certainly with our community growing and the need for that, but a lot of it also had to do with just the differences between organizations, to put it as nicely as possible. And unfortunately, some of those differences even still exist to this day, making something like collaboration very difficult, right? And so, look, while we admit that the Eid thing didn't make a significant impact regarding, that big goal of collaboration, some amazing things did happen. We were able to mobilize 5,000 Muslims on 5 separate occasions in downtown in the heart of Toledo. And they absolutely loved it. I mean, the feedback from people was outstanding. Many of them heard. At one point, we were thinking about stepping away from Eid and collaborating in different ways to kind of keep the momentum going, and they flipped out on us. I mean, literally, I got calls saying that if you guys stop doing Eid, I'll never forgive you, and this is something that has to keep going all the time. And so, alhamdulillah, we have committed. We've taken that upon ourselves. We've added more people to our group. This year, you're going to have to forgive us because of the current pandemic and the situation that we're facing. It's going to be hard to have a mass gathering of that size. And so while this year it's looking like probably we're going to skip a year, probably even Eid al-Adha too, but we'll see kind of what the ruling will be on that when we get there. But certainly for Eid Ramadan, it's going to be very tough. But inshallah, you have my word here. You're hearing it first here live on Facebook, that we will be back and we will be better than ever, inshallah. Okay. And so Eid Fest, I think it's fair to say that that's kind of what it's been dubbed. Eid Fest is here to stay. And if anybody has feedback in that regard, please feel free to message me directly, and we'd love to hear your input on that. Another initiative that we kind of throughout this whole kind of process, we did a Muslim sports league. We did 3 seasons of a men's basketball league where we were able to reach out to different brothers across the city, regardless of, again, what mosque you attended or what branch of Islam that you followed. We want to get together and facilitate building the bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood, and it was so cool. I didn't know there were so many people that like playing basketball. We had about 100 brothers, and we had a nice league, and like I said, it went on for 3 or 4 seasons. And people would bring their families and their children to watch, and it was really nice to create those bonds, and a lot of good can come from that, I think, as well down the road. So that was certainly nice, and even a lot of non-Muslims joined the league, and we had a chance to really show what we were about by different things. Obviously, if it was time to pray, we would stop and pray at halftime and things of that nature, trying our best to lead by example, which would be on the basketball court, having good character and refraining from a certain language. But obviously we're also really competitive. Ismail, if you know any basketball players in the community, you'd probably know that sometimes it's hard to hold back. And so that was certainly a challenge, but also a good reminder that, hey, if we're going to make a league and put, Muslim, have a type of Muslim branding on that league, that we have a responsibility to live up to. And I think overall that turned out really well. We were also exploring different digital applications to unify the community. We looked at different calendars, unified calendars and applications that one could use. And Ismail played an integral part in creating a community-wide Facebook page where all the organizations dedicated a certain admin person to be on that page and to at least post the events all in one nice, neat place. And I know that sounds pretty simple, but it was not that easy getting that together. I remember Ismail kind of rushing to do something because we had talked about it for so long, and then you were just like, let's just do this. Maybe you can talk a little bit. Was that challenging to get that going?
Right. I mean, I think, from a similar perspective as yourself, I think we see in our community this this haste, not hastiness, this sluggish mentality in terms of getting things done. And I think it ultimately just came down, for me at least, that if we were just to initiate, if we were just to take the first step, other people would kind of follow the lead. So I think technical problems is a big problem for institutions, and I think for a lot of Muslim organizations. I think we kind of get caught up in the small arguments and the differences, like you mentioned. And ultimately, what it really is maybe just a logistical issue that we're facing. That sometimes when we have more space as a community, whether that's a bigger mosque, or we have better ways to communicate, whether that's email or other forms of technology that improve that communication, then a lot of problems that were originally problems, they eventually clear up. But I want to kind of throw the question back at you.
Sure.
Why is it that when it comes to technology, why does it come to creating actual organizational structures that we're not successful most of the time?
Yeah.
And kind of slip in how, like, what kind of structures and systems you established within Aid Toledo to make, although seemingly small, which actually had a really big impact,
Yes.
something like Aid Toledo to make it successful. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's a great question, man. And I think it goes back to, like, okay, as a small business owner and someone that inherited a small business from my father. So my father 30 years ago opened a business here in Toledo. So just to give you a little example, right? There came a point in my life when I graduated college where I had to make a decision: go work or join, the family business. And the problem with joining the family business was this: me and my dad, it was tough. There was a power struggle. I mean, he had worked over 15, 20 years to build this, what he felt like was very, I mean, it's like your child at that point, right? I mean, it's this organization, you put your blood, sweat, and tears, you've done amazing work, right? And so there comes a point now, the big statistic in the small family business world is 70% of family-owned businesses, just like ours, fail before they're passed on to the second generation. 70% never make it to the second generation. And the statistic gets even higher when you try to go from second to third. So that's what we're facing here, Ismail, is basically the same thing, but in the nonprofit sector. We have, God bless them, our leaders that came from overseas, built these institutions, built the buildings, bought the buildings, did an amazing job. In fact, you got to praise them 10 times before you criticize them once, because we can't fathom how much they put into this stuff. And it's really a lot, man. If you imagine you're putting your life savings, all your time, everything into these places. Now imagine there comes a time where the environment around you has changed. Everything is changing around you. You have to get to that point where you're willing and you're okay and you're embracing succession planning. And
Mm,
that's such a huge part of it, bro. I really feel like that is the missing ingredient. Because when you plan succession ahead of time and you know what it looks like and you embrace it, it's totally different feeling, because that's going to encourage the next generation of people. They're going to see, wow, these people are calling out to us with open arms, right? They're saying, look, look what we've built. We need somebody to carry this torch. We want to entrust you. We want to empower you. We want to embolden you, right? And that really has to be almost extravagantly kind of over exaggerated, really, on the part of the institutions to really get that traction that you're speaking of and to really attract young, energetic talent. Because I, for one, can attest to how easily one can get burned out. If you're not supported, right, and if you feel like it's constant uphill battle, right, it's very hard to keep that momentum and energy going. It really is. And so that would be the one thing moving forward that I wish we can do better as a community, right? And we're all part of this, right? There's no finger pointing here. It isn't just a small group of people. We all need to speak up. It's our responsibility to not just point fingers and say, hey, they should do this. No, we need to say, hey, we're here, we're ready. Here's how other people are doing it, and we wish we can kind of get it done in the same way. Does that make sense,
that makes
Sai?
that makes perfect sense. And I want us to kind of end here with one last question. If you
Sure.
could give advice in, to other communities, maybe people at your own generational level, people in
Mm.
other communities outside of Toledo, how to start up a Eid Toledo kind of, initiative, or even for younger generation people like myself or even younger to get involved with Masajid or things like Eid Toledo. So, two
Great
questions:
question, man.
how can we advise people your age, people who are right now at their prime, and how would you advise budding Muslims who are kind of seeing all this unfold?
Absolutely. Great questions both. Okay, so I think both kind of have the same answer. And my sincere advice, my recommendation is that for myself and everybody watching included, is to work really hard on unifying the town and community that they live in. Unifying is such a big word, right? I mean, what I mean by that is there has to be some type of umbrella organization, right? A bridge across Muslim organizations and individuals that can create a united voice, a united Muslim voice for Muslims in Toledo, a way that we can accomplish things that nobody can accomplish by themselves, right? And the mission would be to just make sure that we are able to sustain and enrich the quality of life for Muslims around us, right? That has to be the goal, right? Like, so how can you make my life better? Alhamdulillah, we do this for our reward in the akhirah, but we all know too, we need this life. I need to make my life better here. I need it to be easier. I need it to be enriched, both professionally, intellectually, and I need to increase my understanding of Muslim values and just improve my life in all these ways. If our institutions are not doing that for you, if you're out there listening, and for me, then we need to work harder, right? We need to find a way. And in my humble opinion, the best way to do that is when we all work together in some capacity.
I'm,
Okay.
I'm afraid, brother Adam, our time is almost up. Um,
Bro.
Adam, how can people stay in touch with you and learn more about the work that you do?
Thank you, bro. If anybody wants to reach out to me at any time, use any social media that you can find me on. I'm very responsive, most responsive to LinkedIn and Facebook. Those would be the first kind of two choices. Or you can email me. My email address. Can we post it somewhere on the chat,
Of
Ismail,
course,
perhaps?
Yep.
And that would be the best way. And I'm always up to listening to young youth with their challenges and trying to help you navigate through those. So please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to meet with you.
Once again, Brother Adam, thank you so much for your time. Jazakallah khair.
وإياكم.
Till next time, inshallah, when COVID clears up, we have another Eid, inshallah.
Thanks, Habibi. I appreciate it. Thank you,
Assalamu
everyone.
alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Take care.
Assalamu alaikum.